this goes back to my days with Discover Outdoors. I had decided to put it up for sale. And the reason for that was I was scared, like this is going to be the only thing I do with my career. There's so much out there to learn and to grow and experience. And I gathered the team and I had to tell them that I was selling the company. And even then, I couldn't be honest. I didn't feel like I could be honest. The honest answer of telling them why I wanted to sell the company was I was burned out and I was scared. That's not what I said.
That story comes from my guest today, Kirk Reynolds. Kirk is a seasoned founder who's built and sold multiple companies, and today he runs Wilder Retreats, which are award-winning corporate retreats based all around the world in nature. They look absolutely stunning. And I got to sit down with Kirk to hear his story, explore a few of the speed bumps that he's encountered along the way, and then pull out the lessons that he took from those experiences with him. In our conversation, we talked a lot about difficult conversations, how to navigate them, how to prep for them, how to manage your emotions during them. He shared a few of his. He talked about sharing the news with his team of 55 employees that his company was being sold, while kind of hiding the real reason behind the acquisition. You just heard a little preview of that in our intro here. He also shared the identity crisis that followed the acquisition when the company that purchased his old startup shut it down, and how that felt and how he managed those. And we talked about what happened after that acquisition, including the blunt feedback that he received that he was being too much of a people pleaser, which changed the way that he led and managed others afterwards. It is an honest, raw conversation about identity and leadership and trust and all kinds of good stuff. Anyways, that is enough from me. Let's go ahead and hear from Kirk.
I was definitely always an entrepreneur. I started my lawn mowing business when I was 12, and I quickly grew a portfolio of clients. I would type up my own invoices for the neighbors who paid me to mow their yards, and start tracking revenue, and then start projecting what am I going to make this summer? And that's where entrepreneurship certainly started.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And did that come from your folks? Were they also entrepreneurs?
My dad was a combination of things. So he came from a pretty poor farming background, and he went to college, and he eventually became a banker. And then he worked his way up, and he was kind of like the small town, community banker. But he definitely had a moment that it absolutely shaped who I am today. There was a lot of consolidation in banking in the 90s, and the lines between states started breaking down. You could start having interstate banks. So there's a lot of consolidation, and he got pushed out of his job. Very quickly, he went from president of the local bank to out of work. And so I got to see the devastation in him. And that was him. That was his identity. He rallied his board of directors from the bank, who were just happened to be local farmers and his best friends. And we're going to go to the town over, and there's this bank that is going out of business. We're going to buy it. It's a struggling bank. It's going to be pennies. Bought the neighboring bank with his best friends. And then 20 years later, he is the force in North Missouri when it comes to the small town agriculture banking. So there was this W-2 to entrepreneur shift in him, and he had to just bet it all and brought his best friends with him. And man, yeah, I still remember that. That was amazing.
That is amazing. How old were you when he did that?
It was sophomore year in high school when that happened. It was also because it was the town over. We had to move. It was 20 miles, which is a very big moment for me, right in the middle of your high school time to move. But it was also just I remember it was an amazing, I took it as a moment of opportunity where I was this shy kid in my freshman and sophomore year of high school. I didn't want to be the shy kid anymore. I didn't want to be that kid. And I just remember deciding to be a different person because I got a clean slate. And I went to junior year of this new school. I was the class clown, and I really leaned into it and really just got into sports. And it was all it was for me was just a decision. Like I didn't want to be this old person anymore that I didn't like.
And so for you growing up, did you ever have like a traditional job?
I was a waiter at Olive Garden. So yeah, through college, waited tables and that sort of thing. And then out of college, I went into banking thinking this is more of my make my father proud kind of chapter. And somewhere in there, I went through an MBA program at night. And the best class I ever took at any level of school was in my MBA program, like these two young guys, and young, I mean like mid-30s, taught a VC course. And they came in and had all these stories and like, oh, they talked about all their client or their investments in these companies that were growing and they believed in themselves. And like, oh my God, that it definitely resonated with me. It's just like the feeling of ownership and the feeling of like going all in on something that you believe in and not just like to make your dad proud or to make a good salary, but doing something because you believe in it and you want to build something for yourself. Like that was so attractive to me. So that entered the next chapter of just like a million business ideas every week, just like writing down all of them really bad ideas. And then eventually I had moved to New York and I was working for IBM, but New York being just this epicenter of energy and creativity and people just like, you move there to do something, to be somebody. And I love that energy. And that's where Discover Outdoors came from. It was initially a company just designed to get people who were literally trapped on an island of Manhattan and get them out into the outdoors, guided hikes and climbing trips and rafting and multi-day backpacking trips. And that was the re-entry for me of being an entrepreneur.
Hey, real quick, if you've been enjoying this episode, I'm going to take a wild guess that you're a marketing, product, or growth team lead, which is also my background. And when I first started leading my very first growth team, I have never been more stressed and worked harder and longer in my career because I didn't really have the right system in place. I said yes to everything, and suddenly I was in every single meeting and all the decisions were flowing through me. And I still had my own individual contributor workload on the side. And eventually I stumbled into something that I now call my growth operating system. It's basically a plug and play framework with templates and rituals and how to structure meetings and how to create and document your strategy so that your team can move faster, you can run more experiments, you can win more without you being the bottleneck. So if any of that sounds like you and you're looking for some support, check out my growth operating system at deliveringvalue.co/OS if you want to have more impact and influence without working around the clock. It's deliveringvalue.co/OS. I'd love to hear what you think. Obviously, your career goes on. So you start that company, eventually you have an exit. You've got some other companies that you've created since then that you've built up since then. I want to dig into a few of the speed bumps that you've encountered along the way, which is kind of the whole ethos of the show.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know for you, one of the things I love to ask guests about is like just tough moments of feedback when somebody shared something that was tough that you kind of take with you. Usually these are kind of pivotal moments in our journeys. What comes to mind for you as I think about feedback?
So I had sold Discover Outdoors in 2018, and I still deal with some scarcity mindset demons. And so it's like, I got to quickly get a job. And as soon as I sold the business, and it was a great opportunity. It's this company called Abercrombie Kent. I think they're considered like the leader in luxury travel. And they've been around for a long time, but they've never had an office in North America. And so I got this opportunity to start the office in North America and build Abercrombie Kent. So I'm like, wow, it's entrepreneurial, but I'm getting the paycheck. It's the perfect transition. It's a big company. They have over 2,000 employees. I mean, big for the travel industry. And I remember feeling a little out of place, a little insecure, because I've been in this very comfortable place of being the boss, having your own company and not really being challenged on decision.
And how big was Discover Outdoors? Just for those of us who are listening that just aren't familiar with the inner workings of that business, because that's what you're talking about, is the transition from the business that you had built to now joining someone else's business. Yeah. Tell us about the difference maybe in scale.
Yeah, for comparison, Discover Outdoors, we were a team of 55 or so, and We were taking about 10,000 people a year on adventures. It scaled to a certain level, but the feeling of it was very intimate, very personal. It was a tight community. And then going to Abercrombie Kent, there's just a global brand, and they've got 52, 53 offices all around the world. It was, in comparison, a big jump for me.
Huge. Yeah. For anybody. Yeah. Huge.
It was huge, but also just I struggled with the transition from being an entrepreneur to an employee. And I wasn't anticipating that being a struggle. Like, I ran my own business. I can feel very confident about things. But I get into this ecosystem, and there are systems and procedures and administrative work and like HR, all the administrative aspects of HR. And I can remember feeling just a sense of insecurity. And so my boss, he called me out one day and said, I think you're a people pleaser. And I wanted to punch him. Like, how dare you call me a people pleaser? And I was defensive at first. I denied it. And then, as I do, I take a moment to reflect on it. And I think about certain conversations I was having with employees. And I was really trying to get everybody to like me and to make me feel better about my insecurities of being part of this larger organization. And damn it, he was right. It was a very tough feedback to hear. But not only was it helpful in terms of like, okay, Kirk, you got to be more honest and more direct and have those tough conversations with people. That's surface level taking the feedback, and I took that feedback constructively. But the real power was like, why am I this person who I'm not? That's not authentic to me. And it helped me understand like, oh, I don't know if I feel like I belong in this ecosystem, and I'm just not myself. And that was the real aha moment.
Well, thank you for sharing, first of all. And I find this really interesting for a million reasons that I think the listeners to this show will resonate with, which is you join a new company. It is drastically different from the old environment that you were in for a million different details, right? The example that you shared was specific to you and the size and the scale and being the founder to being a team member. I think there's a lot of folks who can resonate with, I'm in this new environment and I'm feeling a little outside myself and I'm not really sure how to be effective and I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself to like kind of hit the ground running and I'm a little out of sorts. And so I actually want to go back, but I want to explore how you work through this because I think there's a lot of takeaways for folks that will listen to this show. So first, you mentioned kind of the feedback and how it sort of hit in the moment. Can you actually take us back to the moment? Is this in like a 360 review kind of a thing? Is this just mentioned off the cuff in the hallway? Did he write you an email? Like how was the feedback actually delivered? And did that have an impact on maybe the way that it felt?
Yeah. My boss's name's Marty, was his boss at the time. His name's Marty. And he is anything but formal. He's just direct. He's raw. And he just called my cell phone and he just noticed a pattern that just hit him. And he instantly makes a call. There's no thinking through what he's going to say. And he just calls me out. He's blunt. And that was the relationship that he fostered between the two of us. We can get into fights and really yell it out and then like instantly come to a resolution because we get straight to it. I think it's important to share a little more context of what was going on in the moment. So I just started with Abercrombie Kent. The owner of Discover Outdoors, the company who bought it, decided to shut it down. So they're going into COVID. And somewhere in there, I had gotten the news that they were closing the company. And
your old company, right? This is
my old company, Discover Outdoors. Yeah. And I don't know how many people in your audience have gone through this experience. So it's hard to explain like how much that hurt, like how much it just wrecked how I felt. It was 14 years of building a company. My identity was so wrapped up in it. I was the company and the company was me. And all my value, I was wrapped up in that. And I had like kind of scripted the perfect story. I had the exit that I wanted, that story, and I got the story. And then they closed it. And it sent me to a dark place. I went through coach after coach, therapist, trying to sort through it, and started to pull the pieces apart. Like, I am destroyed because I felt like I died. My identity was so wrapped up in it that it was gone. And it was the hardest lesson to learn. And so in addition to feeling insecure at being an employee at a larger company, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm mourning. And thank God my wife is patient. And she was just like, help me work through this. And yeah, there was a lot of noise in my life that was just not making things easy. And so, yeah, I think my foundation underneath me was shaky. That's part of the reason I don't think I was myself. It wasn't the confident, direct, strong leader that I thought I was or used to be. Yeah, I was shaky.
So you're on a shaky foundation. Then you have this moment that's, you're feeling a little outside yourself. You get some feedback that it looks like you're pushing or pressing a little bit. What happens next? Like, how do you work through that? Like, one of the things that I always think about for context is anytime someone has one of these tough moments and they get some feedback on it, there's a temptation to, one, either hang your head low and kind of sulk for a little while, or the opposite, I don't know which is better, which is that you way over course correct and then you do the opposite of that thing and you do that to detriment as well. And so I'm curious for you if there was one of those that you picked, or if there was a different angle that I haven't shared, and just in general, kind of how you work through this. Because I think there's a lot of folks who have tough moments that they don't work through it quick enough. So I'm always trying to surface some of these tools. There's
not a clean answer for the story, because there's on the intellectual level, I can see, wow, I'm not being the direct, strong leader that I need to be. And so I can start on an intellectual, I can change those things. I can start being more direct. And that is useful in terms of you just build a new habit, and that's all it is. But underneath, the most important part is like how I'm feeling. And I feel like my purpose in life just went away. My identity just went away. That took time. That I couldn't just like, oh, now I see what's going on. I'm fine now. I can move on. No, that took a couple of years of just like processing and mourning and like having long conversations with former teammates who were also sad. And that I think is just one of those things in life where you just like, you can't just go to a therapy session, realize what happened and like, oh, now I'm fine. No, it takes time to process that. So those two things together, processing over time, and then also just like making mental notes, like, okay, I'm going to change the way I am with my employees. And also just like, if I need to have a difficult conversation with an employee, do all the things I need to take care of myself first. Like my daily needs are like, I make sure I'm drinking water, I have a good workout, I sleep well, and be in the right mindset for something that's challenging. And so just, forming those new habits.
For folks who are listening to this, that hear all that, and then they're maybe in a situation where they're in a new role and they feel like they're sort of pressing a little bit and maybe feeling a little imposter syndrome for different reasons, right? You kind of shared the reasons that were personal to you, but maybe they've got some different reasons that are personal to them. What should they, or how can they ramp up in a way that doesn't have them pressing too much? Like what's the thing that we should listen for, or what feedback should we ask for so that we can figure out and course correct sooner if we're not showing up in the ways that we want to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, first of all, like just knowing yourself, and like I know when I'm being defensive, it's because somebody's got some truth to what they're saying, and I don't want to hear it. So those are like good telltale signs for me. Like if I'm feeling a certain way and just like closing my eyes and like, yep, there's something going on here that is, I need to look at directly. My personal philosophy on that is just be honest with yourself. And that's taken a long time for me to really to do, and be honest with yourself and understand, like, if you're getting some negative feedback, like there's an opportunity there to be better.
I was just curious if there was any tools so that folks can, I mean, we're kind of going back to, you getting feedback about the people pleasing, and really just understanding if there are other tools that we can use to get ahead of this kind of stuff. So if we show up in a new environment, we don't have to wait to get this feedback and then all of a sudden it feels heavy. Are there other things that we can do to get ahead on this kind of stuff? So if we are doing things and not showing up as the best version of ourselves, we can identify it faster and maybe course correct before someone else has to correct it for us.
Well, I think it's easy. I'm not trying to make a plug for Wilder right now, but it's easy just to go through life, just doing your routine, and it's almost a reactive, passive engagement with life and your work. And sometimes you got to stop your routine and just go into the day with intention, and not just a checklist of things you're going to get done, but like, today I'm going to make a really big decision, really bold. I'm not going to lead with fear or insecurity or scarcity. And it's so easy, I think, just because we have the same drive to work, we go to the same desk and work, and we check our email at the same time. It's easy to get into these flows that just like, you just become passive. And so I think if you lead your business or you lead your life with intention, and I still try to practice this, and like when I end my day at work and I'm going home, I try not to carry the business with me because it can be all consuming. And my intention before I walk through my front door is like, I'm gonna just give my kids everything I got, give them the biggest hug, get on the floor with them, and like get into that mode with intention instead of just like carrying the garbage with me into the house. So yeah, that's the biggest thing I can take away from this, is like doing things on purpose.
And do you have any like habits or rituals or routines that help you to do that? Like for me, I'll share one that I do. So I also try to do this. It's something that I'm working on. It's sort of an ongoing thing. But for me, I'm in my office or I'm at the house. And when I come home, or when I'm done working, when I come home, I'm already home. But when I'm done working and I'm sort of going to dad mode, I shut the door to my office. And so like, that's part of it, where it's almost like I'm closing it behind me and I'm trying to leave any of the stuff that was going on in there, like trying to leave it in there. And that's like a physical thing that I do.
Yeah.
Is there something that you do that's helpful, or a different thing that folks can try?
Yeah. Mine's a breath, and I'll take a deep breath in and just like, and that's all the business. And I'll just exhale it as empty as I can get my lungs. And like, there it goes. And like, that's the ritual. And whether the actual breath does anything for my physiology, I don't know, but like the ritual definitely helps me say, okay, there it goes, and it's released.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode of the show. If you are, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on. The data shows something like 40% of the people who listen to the show are actually subscribed. It is the best way for you to support the show, and it helps the algorithm find other listeners who are just like you. If you're feeling generous, a quick rating or review makes a huge difference as well. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. Now let's get back to this episode. So going back to this people-pleasing feedback, one of the things I'm always curious about, usually when we receive feedback about ourselves, we see it in other folks. So I'm curious for you, if after this, if you've seen this in somebody else and pulled them aside and gave them the same thing that Marty gave you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny you say that, because it's easy to be very heightened awareness in other people, because it's so ugly. You're so critical of yourself, and you're like, oh, I don't want to see that ever again. I don't want to call people out on my current team, but I've definitely had that conversation where it's for everybody's benefit to be direct and to not waste time and not to coddle. And yeah, it's funny you say that. I didn't even think about that, because it is something that's very top of mind for me.
I mean, I notice it with everything, right? I notice it if there's a part of my body. Like, I'm not super tall, so I'll notice other folks if they're, their height, and you look at those types of things, or any piece of feedback that I've gotten professionally, I see it in everybody else. Yeah. And it's just one of those things that you kind of have a mirror and you can kind of view the world that way. And I actually think it makes it easier if you want to give somebody feedback about something that you've also been through it. And so you know how it feels, how it feels to be on the receiving end. And you also know maybe some of the tools to work through it and how it can become a superpower if they're able to work on that. Maybe you can even help them as part of your relationship. And I'm going to take a wild guess that was probably how you talked to this person.
Yeah. Obviously with empathy.
Yeah, you're right.
You've been there, and and I certainly remember not having the trust of my team in that job, and that felt gross. And it's much easier to share that feedback.
So we're talking about difficult conversations in these different contexts. I'm curious for you, what's one of the hardest conversations that you've had as a leader, as a founder, as a senior team member, and what was it about?
Yeah, when this goes back to my days with Discover Outdoors, I had decided to put it up for sale. And the reason for that was, one, I was scared, like this is gonna be the only thing I do with my career. That kind of scared me. Like there's so much out there to learn and to grow and experience. And on one hand, there's no luckier man on earth that I get to do this. This is my job. This is my life. On the other hand, I feel like I'm missing something. It was that on top of just, 14 years is a long time to do something. And I was feeling burned out. And I didn't feel like I could tell that to anyone, because I felt like my role was the chief cheerleader and I was the ambassador. I couldn't dare say, I'm getting tired of this. And even though that's what I was honestly feeling, and I can tell that to my wife and share those dark feelings with her, but I couldn't say that out loud to anyone else. And so I quietly put it up for sale. I hired a business broker and right away got a company interested. It was a conglomerate of travel businesses, and they thought it'd be a good addition to their portfolio. And it all happened very quickly, and which I wasn't expecting.
And what is very quickly, sorry to interrupt, what does that mean in this context? 'Cause I just have no idea what it would take to sell a business. Like, are we talking weeks, months?
Probably like start to finish 2 months.
Wow.
So there's just like writing all the documentation and like having a package for a company to look at and go through your financials and like the projections and all the things. So starting with that, to taking calls from prospective buyers, to negotiating, going through all the legal paperwork and closing the deal, it was a couple months. And somewhere in there, it was clear like this is going to happen. And so this is in New York, and our office was in a WeWork in Soho. I think we're like within the top 5 first members of WeWork, by the way, and of the whole company. And so it was like, there was like a little history there. And so I gathered the team. We're in the, it's not a conference room. It's like a lounge area, and they've got like the beers on tap, and you can kind of see the WeWork exposed brick walls and the whole thing, and gather them in. And I had to tell them that I was selling the company. And even then, I couldn't be honest. I didn't feel like I could be honest. The honest answer of telling them why I wanted to sell the company was I was burned out and I was scared. That's not what I said. And the thing I said is like, hey, we've got this great opportunity. Here's this established travel company with infinite resources, and they're going to take us to the next level. And I really built up the story. And I remember, some people were like, oh my God, it's amazing. We're going to the moon. And other people were like, I don't buy it. We've got a beautiful thing going on right now. And like, we've got this community, we've got clients for the community. And we're growing like crazy. Like, why would we sell? And I just remember feeling dishonest and a bit of a fake because I was pitching a story that wasn't true. I haven't really shared that with any of the team. And it's been a number of years right now. And I'm not sure if they'll catch this podcast, but yeah, this is honestly the first time I've talked about that out loud. That was hard. And it was just hard to have that disconnect of like what's true to me inside to the message I felt like I had to tell to the team.
I think this is one of the hardest. Well, first, thank you for sharing all that. Appreciate the exclusive, but also just appreciate the story and the human, the human side of things. And I think this is one of the hardest parts about being a leader on any team is this tension you feel between being honest about whatever you're feeling. Because I feel like there's a million times when I've been in-house, when I'm a director or whatever, and I just disagree with decisions that the company's making, or I know something bad is coming, or like we're running out of money, or we have to do a layoff or whatever, but I still need my team to perform. And so the team might even ask me questions. Hey, what do you think about this? And inside I might be like, fucking A, I hate that. I think that is such a dumb decision. I'm not on board. I'm the detractor in the leadership team meeting or whatever. But to my team, I've got to kind of put on this rah-rah, like, no, I'm bought in because that's part of my job and I need my team to perform. I need them to be motivated. And so I've felt, and probably a lot of people listening to this have felt this weird tension between the way I really feel and sort of this mask that I need to keep on, or like this motivation I need to keep on for my team. So I can imagine how that would have felt at the level that we're talking about here. The stakes are higher.
You raise a really good point, and there are certain moments where we have to, it's like military. Like you follow orders and you follow the chain of command, and you don't allow the BS to flow downstream, and you keep everything on point. So there are moments where like I don't think you can or should be fully transparent and honest. I don't think that was this moment in my life. I think I know I could have trusted them and I told them the truth. Hey, if I don't sell because I'm feeling burned out, and I don't know that we're going to continue to grow, it might even get smaller. And that would have been the honest answer. And these are people I knew very well and I loved. And that would have been the right message for them. And I regret that. I wish I had, maybe it's going back to the people pleasing comment. I wish I had been more direct and trusted them.
How do you think things would have played out if you had done that? Because I feel like, again, the details are different, but I think that there's a fear sometimes as a leader of being too vulnerable and then you can't undo it. So I'm curious, like, obviously we're just sort of brainstorming a little bit here, but I'm just curious, based on your reflection and how what you just shared there, how things might have shaken out if you were that vulnerable with the team. What would have been different?
I think that's a principle that you have to trust. Like you have to trust the people that are around you, the people that you love, and you have to go on a limb and give them what they deserve, which is honesty. And I just think that's a principle. And maybe you work with a team that you don't trust, or maybe you don't know them that well, and that's a fair question. But in my specific situation, I didn't honor them with the truth, and I should have. And I don't think there would have been a bad outcome. I think it only would have been positive. Probably resulted in positive things that I couldn't have imagined.
So you mentioned it took about 2 months from when did you say you listed the business? Is that kind of how that works? You listed it on a broker, or you reach out to a broker?
Yeah, I hired a business broker, and they helped draft the documentation and clean up everything to be presentable.
Yep.
And then they go out and network it.
Yep. And so where I'm going with this is that 2 months is a short amount of time to sell a business, but it's a pretty long amount of time to run a 50-person business. And so I'm wondering, during that 2-month period, as you're moving forward with exploring the sale, and then probably still running team meetings and having rah-rah moments with the team, if that impacted you outside of work, if it became like this weird tension where you had this thing that you were looking to sell, but then you were still keeping the team motivated because, you didn't reveal the sale until there was a sale to reveal. Yeah. If there was any conflict that you were working through there.
Yeah, I think we've all had moments of we're living dual lives. And maybe it's as simple as just like, I have something difficult I need to talk to my wife about or my partner about, and I haven't shared that yet. And like, so there's this truth in me that exists that they don't know about. That's hard. That's taxing. It's exhausting to have that. And I do remember carrying that. And I remember just like rehearsing the storyline. And like, this is going to be the pitch to get everybody on board, and just like being very crisp on that. And it's exhausting. It wasn't a fun period for me. Like what should be, here it is, like what should be like this grand moment to selling the company, what a lot of entrepreneurs just dream of, the exclamation point. It was dark. It was hard. Yeah. And again, it goes back to me not trusting the team with the truth. And because of that, I couldn't share it.
Right.
Yeah. I couldn't live in the celebration of the moment.
It's a good example of a lesson that I've learned in some other ways, which is when we often have a goal. In your case, we're talking about maybe exiting from a business, which is, again, a major milestone and an achievement for any entrepreneur. It often feels hollow or unfulfilling when we finally do it, whether it's trying to get a title or a promotion, or sometimes it might be running a race or doing whatever. I've heard studies that show Olympic athletes, like if they win a medal or whatever, if they place really well, afterwards, a lot of times will fall into a state of depression because so much of their identity is like kind of in the climb. And then they sort of get to the place that they're hoping to get to, and they're sort of lost and unfulfilled, and then depressed that they're not more fulfilled, and then sort of get into this cycle. So I've learned that lesson in other ways. And that's kind of what you're talking a little bit about here, right? You kind of get to this goal, you got there in a different way than probably you'd pictured it in your head. And so now you're kind of going through this conflict and a little bit of tension there.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of the not enjoying the journey because like you can't really be satisfied until you get to this thing that you define as happiness. There certainly is an element of that I learned from, and I feel so grateful today, just like to be able to start another business, and like maybe there will be an exit, but holy smokes, like today, this is all we got. And that's truly how I feel. And just there's no I'll be happy if or when. Yeah. So there's a tremendous amount of good that came from that moment. And even like, it's crazy to say today, like I feel grateful that it got shut down, that I had to go through that death for something new to emerge. Man, it's wild to even say that out loud because it was so hard, so painful. But if it still existed, I'd probably still be looking over my shoulder and like still connected with it somehow and not fully moving on from it. Yeah. I think I heard Tony Robbins, and he was quoting, like, just burn the fucking boat.
Yeah.
Burn the boat and just move on.
A while back, I had April Dunford on the show. She's a very successful marketing consultant, used to be an in-house VP of marketing, left her in-house job and became, I think, probably one of the most successful marketing consultants of all time, certainly in the top 5. And I remember asking her, like, did you always have ambition to do that? And she was like, no, dude, I couldn't do the job anymore. And the last job was so bad, I burnt the fucking bridge on the way out. And I was like, well, I got no plan B. So I got to figure out this new thing. I might as well go all in on it. If it doesn't work, I guess I'll be a dog walker or like totally reinvent myself. But I'm not going back to the old thing because that was worse than whatever this future thing could be. So it's cool to see that pattern play out in a different way here.
It's so much freedom to remove that option option and just only forward.
Hey, if you're enjoying the stories on this show and feel like you're ready to tackle some of your own hurdles, I'm here to help. If you didn't know already, I offer one-to-one coaching specifically for people who work on or around growth teams who want to have a bigger influence and impact in their roles. Maybe you're navigating some tough moments, whether it's managing your team or handling feedback. Maybe you just want to step into a bigger leadership role. Or maybe you're at a unicorn company today and you want to make sure that the company doesn't outgrow your skill set. Either way, I can help. If you're interested in learning a little bit more, head to deliveringvalue.co/coaching to learn a little bit more and set up a call with me to see if we jive. All right, enough from me. Back to the episode. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, switching gears just slightly, is so you mentioned you have this difficult conversation coming with the team and you know it's coming. You said, I did some rehearsal, I did some practice, I tried to get the message crisp and probably try to get your energy into a place that you wanted it to be into. And I'm curious, again, for the listeners, if there are other tips, whether it's part of that or other difficult conversations that you've had that helped you prep for that. So like the rehearsal and the practice is part of it. Are there other things that you have done or wish that you had done to kind of get into the right state to enter one of those types of conversations?
Sure. One thing, I don't know where I got this, but like I do it today. I did it right before this podcast to get me in the right state, is the body, mind, spirit connection is incredibly real. And so if I had been working, sitting at my desk for the last 4 hours leading up to this podcast, I'd be flat. I'd be completely out of energy. So I do remember before that meeting with the team, going for a big run and just purging the sweat and just getting the dopamine flowing and feeling good and coming in with that strong energy. I do the same thing at work. Like before a client call, I've got a standing desk right here. I'm sitting now. I'll definitely get up and do some squats and like engage the body. So I'm fully focused and full energy.
What's funny is earlier in our conversation, you were talking about when your family moved in high school and how you have this kind of reinvention and, I get to go to this new place and I get to decide who I want to be, and parts of me from my old school and my old life I'll bring with me and some other parts I don't want to bring with me. Yeah. And that's something that I've practiced in my own life. Actually, behind me on the wall is this skateboard with like a Batman logo on it, which I have because one of my sort of like work personas that I like to put on, I call Happy Bruce Wayne. And it's like, I try to get into a state, right? Bruce Wayne, kind of a serious guy, but I feel like Bruce at its core, he's like kind of suave, sort of slick. Nobody fucks with Bruce, right? It's like you could say anything to that guy and he'd probably just sort of smile and have something witty to say back. And I like that energy. I think when I'm at my best presenting, certainly, I have that sort of self-confidence and that belief in me. But I call him Happy Bruce because like Bruce Wayne, his energy is a little more dark than mine. And so I literally have that as a physical reminder for me on the wall. That's like when I come in here, I'm going to bring a part of that with me. And I need the reminder so that I can reinvent myself as that version. And then again, I close the door on my way out so that I leave that guy here and, I've got to get different playing on the floor with my kids' energy,
Oh my God, that's amazing. I'll share this little guy. So it's just
and for the folks who are not watching, can you just describe what that is for listeners? Yeah.
So a little backstory. So I'm holding up a little wooden figurine from Ghana. So my parents met in Ghana. So my mom's from Germany, my dad's from Missouri. Dad's in an organization similar to the Peace Corps, and my mom was a volunteer nurse from Germany. They, on their own path, landed in this hospital in rural Ghana, and man, I can only imagine the courage for both of them to make that decision to go to this crazy unknown place and to do something wild and adventurous and have no idea what to expect out of it and what they're going to feel and what the day-to-day is even going to be like. And like the courage that they had to make that leap of faith and go into the unknown. This is the little reminder that I'm holding here.
Bring a little more courage into all of our lives.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, why in the world did you say yes to come on this show? Someone who started the amount of businesses that you've started, that's had the trajectory that you've had, you could have very politely said, no thanks, or I don't need to come on. This show obviously is about shining a light on some of the moments that we don't typically talk about publicly. Why'd you say yes to come on?
Well, you're very kind to say those things. It's a great question. You have an energy and your podcast has an intention that is so aligned with what I believe in. And that is showing up with authenticity, for telling the truth. And I enjoy telling the story about like how I didn't tell the truth and like how much that still haunts me. Yeah, that to me is your essence, and the essence of this podcast is being real. And that's exactly what the energy I try to instill in our retreats. And so the faster we can cut through the BS and the surface level conversations, the more beautiful the experience is going to be, the deeper the connections and the more we get out of it. So I've never felt a more direct alignment with the podcast, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
Hell yeah. And you've talked about a bunch of different both tools and rituals and mindsets. I'm curious if there's been any that we haven't talked about already that have had a big impact on your career and on your success, and maybe on the way that you've been able to bring out the best in yourself when it hasn't been easy. Anything we haven't talked about that's on that list?
One thing that my mentor has been challenged me on recently is, year after year, we write our goals, we have our financial expectations and all the metrics of what we expect. And instead of just following our expectations, which are reasonable and measured, what do you really want? What does crazy look like? And dare to ask yourself the question, and I know a lot of people talk about 10xing your business and all these things, but truly ask yourself, what would life look like if you 10x'd your goal? So if you create this crazy goal, and then with honesty, answer that question. Well, what would it look like, and what would I need to do? And then by chipping away at that and actually putting smaller goals behind it, holy shit, it's actually a reasonable goal now. It's possible. And it's been honestly a recent breakthrough for me of not following expectations, but setting completely unreasonable goals. And then is this even doable? And then do I want it? With honesty, there's going to be a cost to get there. So I love that mindset of just thinking beyond reasonable, because my whole life has been about being reasonable and practical and growing with measured ways, which it can serve you in certain ways, but it can also hold you back.
Are you comfortable to share one of those unreasonable goals that's on your list? Literally, the next question I was going to ask is, what are your goals at this stage? And it sounds like one of your goals is to challenge yourself to think bigger, but I'm curious to know, even one layer deeper than that, if there's anything that you think about as one of your personal goals.
Yeah, there is certainly the metrics, the numbers that we can plug into, whether it's revenue or number of clients and number of participants. Those are all there. But the one big goal, which it taps a deeper transformation within me, is to be more selective about who we work with, who our clients are. The goal would be better defined as releasing the need to grab every single deal that we can grab, close every single client, and be truly selective about who we're going to work with. And then when we do close them, my God, we just shower them with love and generosity and just give them everything we've got, instead of spreading ourselves too thin and just have the scarcity mindset, oh, we got to take everything. So it's much more, it's a harder goal to achieve for me, because that requires some release of control and release of taking advantage of every single opportunity that comes their way and being more selective. So that's my big goal for 2026 is to just get excited about every single client we take on, and just know that they're the only person on earth that matters. and share that generosity with them. And I do have faith that results in a very big trajectory of growth.
It's funny, I called my business Delivering Value, which I kind of hate at this moment, but that's what I called it, and that's what I'm sticking with. And the whole reason why I did it was because for this reminder, right? Almost as a prompt to myself, which is, if I just focus on helping people and those people focus on helping their companies, I'm never going to have to worry about money or revenue or anything. It's just going to take care of itself, right? If you just focus on delivering as much outsized value as humanly possible, whatever ways you define that, whatever context, you're working in or whatever, everything else kind of takes care of itself. And that's kind of what you're saying here, which I think is beautiful.
It's not easy in fact, I can't say it honestly that, well, I'm just going to release the need to have certain revenue numbers. That's not honest. for me. The business has to add up, and it's got to work. But the sentiment of that is absolutely truthful.
Yeah. So you've come on and you shared a ton of learnings from your journey, from people pleasing to managing difficult conversations, managing the tension of being a leader and being honest and being transparent and vulnerable. Anything that we haven't shared that you want to share directly to the listeners, either from your story, things that we've covered or not covered? Any other takeaways?
Yeah, I think the one point that has been very powerful for me is closing a chapter, is knowing how to properly close a chapter. And I remember after selling Discover Outdoors, like sold it on a Friday, worked for someone else on a Monday. I had it lined up, and it's like, I'm not going to skip a beat of income. I was just because I'm scared of living under rich and being broke. And so I think the chapter closed itself for me by the buyers closing down the business. And I think it's so important to honor a chapter, honor a moment, and truly wrap it up and move on in the future. And I've learned that certainly later in life. And yeah, I think it's so important to have those celebrations of what has happened and truly honor it and leave the past where it is.
Kirk, thanks for coming on, man. Sharing your stories, your lessons, some of the game. For folks who are listening to this and want to connect with you, learn more about Wilder, something else, where should we send them?
Our website is discoverwilder.com. Love to connect that way. You can find out ways to connect there or LinkedIn. You can message me on there. And yeah, Andrew, this has been a great conversation and feels good to speak honestly and almost like therapy. So I appreciate it.
I had a debate at one point if I should call the show Work Therapy, but I thought it might be a little bit heavy. But dude, appreciate you coming on. We'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes. Thanks so much, man.
Amazing. Thank you.